either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And in our last episode, Mel Gibson saved Scotland from the tyranny of the English. Now he's back across the pond to fight the English again during the American Revolution in America's version of Braveheart.
You mean the Patriot?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
And I am so glad that right off the bat you mentioned that once again Mel Gibson is fighting the English, because one of the largest criticisms that when this movie came out was from English critics complaining that this was English slander.
I have a lot to talk about that at the end of this episode, so
So, from the get-go, keep that in your mind as this movie plays out.
Yes. So, for those who don't know, The Patriot is a historical era film about a father who is pushed into the American Revolution after his son is killed by a ruthless British officer.
How dare.
Yes. And so, The Patriot's directed by Roland Emmerich. Yeah, it'd be Emmerich. It's a German director.
Yeah. But, does that change how I'm going to pronounce it? No.
No. And it's written by Robert Rodat. It stars, obviously, Mel Gibson.
Sure does.
Heath Ledger, which I think this is our first Heath Ledger movie.
Yeah, this is an early Heath Ledger film.
True, but it's not the Heath Ledger film that I knew him for either.
That's true. But I do think this is a good example of, how Heath Ledger even from early days already had, a really strong acting foundation. Mm-hmm. Even in this garbage fire of a movie, he is still a great actor. Yeah.
And it also stars Joely Richardson. So Emmerich, I'm actually we've actually mentioned him a couple times over the years.
Yes, we have.
Before The Patriot, he directed Stargate, Independence Day, and the 2000 adaptation of Godzilla.
A lot of very big, dramatic, action-y films. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
He also directed a lot of disaster movies. The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
10,000 BC. 2012. Anonymous, as well as the Independence Day Resurrection.
Yeah, so take all of those and mush them together and set them in colonial times.
So there's definitely a style going into this movie to begin with.
Yes. I do think, though, that this one probably is the most toned down of his stylings. Mm-hmm. A lot of his stuff, while there's definitely, the drama, the action, the suspense, there is a nice, leveling out for this movie. I wouldn't say that it's, the calmest movie. It's not a 180 flip from his styling. It's still very much, a long... if you like those movies, Patriot's also going to be in that same vein, but it's not necessarily, an immediate connection.
Yeah. No, they're... Once you know, it's of course he directed all these other movies.
Yeah.
As for Rodat, he was one of the writers on Fly Away Home and Saving Private Ryan, as well as Thor: The Dark World and The Catcher Was a Spy, another movie we did 2 or 3 years ago at this point.
Yes, but also this kind of makes sense on where maybe the toning down came from, because those movies tend to lean more towards the emotional side as opposed to the big drama and show-stopping moments. Yeah. So you can kind of see where the two kind of met in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so once again, Mel Gibson needs no introduction, as this is the third movie we've covered in a season on this guy.
Yeah, I think we're very quickly moving him. We have gone through the arc of Mel Gibson. This is the end of the arc of Mel Gibson, I feel like.
We gotta do Passion of the Christ sometime.
No, please. I have such flashbacks to Passion of the Christ. I went to a mega church when that movie came out.
Oh, God.
And I went to a Christian school when that movie came out. So I want you just to imagine the panic that went through all of the parents. And, there were people at my church who wouldn't see Harry Potter, but they were taking their kiddos to opening night of Passion of the Christ.
Which would be worse to cover, that or God's Not Dead?
I would argue that Passion of the Christ has lost a lot of its drive over the years. There's still a lot of people who hold on to it very dearly, which, from a theatrical point, I can get. God's Not Dead is now a series.
I know, there's 4 of the movies.
Yeah, and there's also a lot to go with that. So, like, maybe, I hate to say it, maybe we tackle that one? I don't know. We will talk separately about entering the Christian sphere, because that is a large and scary bubble.
Yeah.
There's so many movies.
We'd probably take a more different route, probably go with Ingmar Bergman or something.
Maybe we could, no, this is, again, a discussion for a different topic, because, again, I was in the depths, I was in the trenches of that sphere, and there's so many variations.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it later.
We will get to it.
But while this may be the first movie we talked about about the heartthrob Heath Ledger.
Yes.
He did start off in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Another
and
delight.
then the year after The Patriot, he was in A Knight's Tale, which is the movie I know him from. And
honestly, I think maybe his best representation, mostly because that one he gets to shine better. Because in this movie, while his acting is stellar and the part is great for him, he is shadowed by Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, I realized how long the list of actors was. And I was like, I didn't remember most of I literally just watched this film and I forgot half these people were in the film because I was too busy staring at Mel Gibson.
Yes. And also Heath Ledger, obviously, the Joker, one of the best performances ever.
Yeah, no, hands down. We will eventually get to the Joker. But, think of this as, less of just me shitting on Mel Gibson and more of a look into the early works of Heath Ledger.
We have the old heartthrob and now the young heartthrob.
Yes, and one is significantly better than the other, but this is probably a good movie for both of them. As
well as an Aussie, which adds bonus points.
Oh, always.
Yeah. As for Richardson, I am somewhat familiar with her work. She was in 101 Dalmatians, Event Horizon, 1996's Loch Ness, and I do remember vaguely seeing at some point, but she has also been in The Last Mimsy, Anonymous, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American adaptation.
Yes.
The Color Out of Space, which we covered last year.
A good movie.
And The Sandman, another Neil Gaiman.
Yes. She's one of those actresses that, comes up regularly. I just don't necessarily, instantly recognize her. And I don't know if that's just because she plays a little bit more, a larger variety of characters. And, has been pigeonholed. It's very easy to pinpoint a character who always plays the same role over and over again. So I think that's probably why. Because, I've seen most of her movies. Just not on purpose. Yeah,
she's not the star power you go for. And again, as many of the actors and actresses in this movie, they're not important.
No, we're just here, unfortunately, for Mel.
Yes. And so, like all of our history episodes, our sources for this episode include Myths of the American Revolution by John Ferling, published by the Smithsonian Magazine in January 2010, ushistory.org, commentary by director Emmerich, and South Carolina Encyclopedia.
Yes.
So, one interest before going into it, The Patriot is inspired by real-life people, and also 1956's The Searchers, which is a John Ford Western about the Civil War, it's about a vet who sets out to rescue his niece from the Comanches.
And something that I think, one of the reasons why I think this movie succeeds where Braveheart fails, is Braveheart also was meant to be inspired by real historical events. And while neither of them follow history all that closely, I would argue that this one took the inspired part much better than Braveheart did.
Yes, because while we will talk about history here and there, it won't be as in-depth as Braveheart, because while inspired by real people, it's not a movie about them. Instead, it's a fictional story with a historical backdrop, which makes a big difference.
Yes, and this is where, what part of when I was talking about in our Braveheart episode about how Mel Gibson is a good actor, but maybe not the best writer-director combo act. This is, I think, where the differences will shine through.
Yes.
Because these are practically the same, but somehow drastically different. Like the core ingredients. Like there's flour, eggs, and milk in both, but one turned into soup and the other is cake.
They're both revenge stories.
They are. With historical elements, with like over-the-top drama, a little bit extra gore just for the hell of it, and like useless women characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they are they are, in essence, they have the same ingredients, but one of them turned out much better than the other.
We'll get to that.
We will.
So, before we dive in, what are we drinking today, Chris?
You, in all of your genius glory, found for us Sam Adams.
Summer Ale, Citrus Sweet Ale.
Delight.
Cheers.
Cheers. The summer version is significantly better than their normal.
I don't even remember what the normal tastes like. I don't really drink this, so...
It's got a little bit more flavor. It's still very watery. Much like this movie.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, unfortunately, that works. So, the Patriot.
Oh,
yes. We open on a man narrating as he puts weapons away with a very simple title card. And this was done in a straightforward manner to add kind of a dark overtone to it all.
Which I agree with. I like the title card. It fits the period film, like, trope. I don't care for the narrative here.
No.
Mostly because this whole movie is done from Mel Gibson's character's narration.
Yeah.
And then we get this other narrator who you could assume is the same character.
It's Gibson.
Yeah, I know it's spoken by Gibson, but it's not like...
I know what you're saying. It's like
it's not like him recounting this tale to someone. It's just him, like, thinking out loud.
Yeah, it's like how the grandpa starts off the story of Princess Buttercup and, what's his name? Wesley. Yeah. The difference with that one, though, is that one they take the narrator and give him a full character. Yeah, exactly.
And not just like, oh, it's the narrator, which I'm not gonna lie. As someone who loves musicals, the narrator as a character, very common trope. I hate it. I think it's lazy. I think there's only one instance that I can think of where it really works, where the narrator is not like a person with a name, but narrator is just narrator, and that is, unfortunately, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Where it's just narrator, and it's like a whole part.
Have you seen Idiocracy yet?
I don't think I have.
Oh, you would love Idiocracy.
I will have to get into that one, because, like...
Terry Crews is president.
I fucking love Terry Crews, man. You know what? You sold me. I don't even care what the rest of the movie's about. Because normally narrator, like, is there to set up something, and this narrator does set up, but it doesn't set up any more than what the title card could have done.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, we have eyeballs. I can see what he's doing.
Yeah, it's very much so that they went for telling over showing instead of showing through telling.
Which is hilarious.
Telling through showing.
Which is hilarious because, like, the rest, from, like, here forward, the rest of this film, mostly showing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of showing.
Really. Yeah. At times.
Yeah.
But from here we cut to people working in the field and a writer coming in. Nice, charming start, feels very rustic. Like, it feels like it's the start of, like, a rustic food company commercial. Like,
yes, it does.
The Patriot bread, baked in the fields of South Carolina.
And do you know why it feels like that?
Why?
It is because this movie, from the get-go, is fully goddamn aware that this man is a slave-owning man in the South during a slave-owning time, fighting on the wrong side. But he's a good guy. He works in them fields, too.
No, there's a little bit more to it.
I know. This movie acknowledges all of it and then, like, manages to put a modern day lens over it to make it okay.
Yeah.
And so from the get-go, that's why it feels like a commercial.
Tries to make it more redeeming than it actually is.
And that's why it feels weird. And like because, like, that's exactly what commercial companies do too. They're like, "Oh, well, we don't want to alienate anyone. But also we want you to think of plantations."
Yeah.
Which is a little hard to do.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit.
But I also love how everyone is excited that, oh shit, it's mail day. Like,
that is hilarious.
Like, I mean, I think there's this romanticization that people had nothing else better to do with their time. And so, like, any information from the outside world was, oh boy, great times ahead. Or,
yeah. No, like, it is, this movie, despite being very gory and, like, very lacking in any real substance as far as, like, the, like, parallel romance stories happening, it tries very hard to take a lot of those romance historical tropes and, like, overlay them on top of this war drama.
Yeah,
So, like, the excitement about news and, like, the, like, cutesiness of this house and the land around it, and, like, everyone is, like, a big family.
Yeah.
Until we all start dying.
And only certain ones eat at the table.
Yeah, we should talk about that. You will see how the movie, like, doesn't talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. But we get a little heartwarming moment or comedic moment of our protagonist who can't build a chair. It has we get a little caption that this is set in 1776 South Carolina.
I appreciate that they did that. As someone who studied and went to college for furniture, this chair is wrong. This chair would not have been wild. Like, this is the equivalent of making this man the weird kooky inventor from Beauty and the Beast. Where, like, this chair would not have been the standard styling of this chair. Rocking chairs were not popular during this time period. And on top of this, the style of rocking chair wouldn't really be developed for a few more decades.
Interesting.
So, like, this is a little strange that this man has really taken up the hobby of foreign crafted rocking chairs. But good for him. Again, nothing in this movie makes any goddamn sense. And
rustic Patriot bread.
Well, and I think part of the reason why they did this is because to a modern day audience, a rocking chair, especially one of this style, is recognizable. It is one of the most popular stylings. It lasted the longest in our minds. And it's something you can still buy.
Come on, sit on old Pappy's knee on my rocking chair and I'll read you a bedtime story about Mel Gibson, Savior of America.
Yes. Whereas, like, the chairs that would have probably been something that this character would have been involved in, like, making from home as a hobby, we can still see them. They are just not very popular, and they are not something that most people strive to own in their home. They have, for those of you who, like, dig into furniture and, like, how that has changed throughout the years, the colonial furniture goes from ugly but useful to pretty and not so useful. And we're still in the ugly phase.
I took one history of furniture class, and I remember X-frame chairs.
Okay, well, that's great.
I do remember more, but
yeah.
I don't know the history of rocking chairs. So that's actually kind of interesting, because that's something I didn't even think about. I'm just like, of course it's a rocking chair. So I was in that same mindset
They got you too. And on top of that, rocking chairs are, like, the nerdiest chair that you can build, because, like, there's a lot of math that goes into a rocking chair, not just to make it sit upright, which seems to be this character's problem, is, like, it falling apart. Hilarious. My problem is when you rock in it, having it run across the house. That seems to be, or, like, you lean in it and it, like, flips you out.
You want it to be like Thanos' blade, perfectly balanced.
Yes, but actually, and this is part of the reason why this chair wasn't, like, a thing that people were just, like, building in their garage.
Well, you know what? Maybe he is that kooky man.
From a furniture history standpoint, this man moves from being that, like, whimsical history, like, love interest to, wow, what a weird kooky man.
It's to show he works with his hands.
I know, but, like, they could have picked so many other things.
Also a horrible pickup line. What them hands do, baby. What you make with those.
Bad failing rocking chairs. That's what them hands do.
Disappointments every time.
Yeah. Well, and, like, we see the pile that he throws them on, and his trouble seems to solely be in the fact that when he sits on them, they break.
Yeah.
Like, this man is not a carpenter.
No. I don't even know if he's really a farmer.
They, at one point, make it sound like he's out there in the fields working with everyone, because, again, this film isn't addressing the blaring, elephant in the room of the time period and this person. So I think, based off of the romanticized fake gentleman that they have, like, really plucked out of the 21st century here, that yes, he is a hobby farmer. He doesn't know what's going on, but he's there to help. And he owns it.
He owns the land.
He owns it, yeah.
So, our intro to this movie ends with Benjamin visiting a grave, and we have the basic setup of the family now complete, which they have so many burning candles. But
yes, they fucking do. During the daytime, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what a waste. I love it.
But I do like the attempt from the director's side is he had to figure out how to deal with almost no or minimal artificial lighting. So almost all the scenes in this movie are shot with natural lighting, which does wonders for the cinematography of this movie, which I will compliment multiple times.
Oh, no. This movie looks stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is very few shots that, like, are either too dark or improperly lit. Like, this movie looks great.
Yeah.
90% of my complaint is, like, it's the plot. Yeah. It's the plot and some of the character interactions. Visually, great. Love it.
Yeah.
Looks fantastic. And the fact that they managed to get a house that is more or less period appropriate, like, there was definitely some research done history-wise.
There was a lot of history research done into this. I did some digging in everything that a good chunk of what they said checks out to a point.
And from my architectural and furniture side, while there are parts like the rocking chair that don't pan out, a lot of it really surprisingly does. Like, the dining room looks pretty good. Like, the candle usage, check, right on. Like, the house in general looks about right.
If we had a commercial for old-time turkey dinner...
Yeah.
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 I don't know. Maybe it's just because it has, like, that natural kind of dreamlike glow to it that we don't expect that it's naturally lit.
The natural lighting does help an awful lot move this out of the, like, war and into that romantic feeling, because everything's very soft and bright, and, like, because we're using a lot of natural light, like, you can see a lot of the fade to, like, the fields aren't as crisp, like, there's a nice fade and glow there.
Yeah.
The people seem to be well lit, there's a nice contrast going on.
Even during the romance scenes, it misses that old-timey soft focus of the female and then the hard focus of the man.
Yes, which, you know, we'll get to that.
But after dinner, it's news time, and this is where we get a little bit of a rift in the family. Benjamin is very much so concerned about the war, but Gabriel is so ready for it, and so is the other son, who I don't remember his name.
Doesn't matter, dead son.
Yeah.
Surprise, he's dead.
But we also learned that Benjamin's called to an assembly, and it's off to Charles. They called it Charlestown.
That's so cute. Adorable.
Yeah. Charleston is where they're going.
Which, I mean, Charleston does mean
or
Charlestown.
Charlottesville.
I mean, other
maybe
way.
something. I don't know.
He's going into town. I do like that they, without telling us what this man does, make you assume that he's, like, important.
Yeah, he's a landowner, so he has a say in what they're doing in that colony.
Yeah, yes, but also, like, based off of what we can see around, he does not seem to be a large landowner, but he is treated as a large landowner.
He has at least 3 people working for him that aren't related to him.
That's not a lot. That's a very few number. Because a lot of the people who would have been, like, historically brought on would have had a small village living on their land.
Yeah.
Like...
Well, and they try bringing that up a little bit later on, and it kind of loses what they had going for it.
Yeah, I kind of like that they, like, just ambiguously are like, yeah, he's important. What does he do? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Why is he important?
Because he's the main character and the savior of America.
Yes, and honestly, that kind of works.
Yeah.
Because unlike Braveheart, where they give him, like, specific things, like, they state, like, oh, he was this person, he's traveled here, he's educated, like, all these things to make him, like, why he should be this important person, which then comes back to bite them, because, like, it doesn't all line up, and it doesn't add to the character. Like, he doesn't use those traits as a character. This one, it kind of works out, because they're just like, why is he important? I don't know, don't worry about it. And you're like, okay.
Alright, he's the main guy we're following for now.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, it kind of works.
Yeah, to a point. I mean, there's so much, and I think part of the reason it works, too, is because we're just so inundated with a bunch of not random, we're inundated with a bunch of minute and insignificant events.
Yes.
That the rest of it doesn't really matter.
I also think it works because, unlike Braveheart, his only, like, shown characteristics is that he's, like, really into banging this girl in the cold river. This character is given, like, quite a lot of small details that, while Mel Gibson, I don't think, is a very good writer, he is a good actor, and so he adds on to a lot of those small things. Like, he's a family man. He's very invested in his boys and the running of his house and his hobbies. Like, he has a character and personality.
Well, that's something the director brought up, is the reason Mel Gibson does such a good job in this movie and why he's so convincing is because he treated everyone as if he was the father, which is
what the character role is.
But he was a father at that point, too, so, like...
Yeah, no, like, this works really well, and I think this is probably one of his most convincing roles.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so into Charleston we go,
Woohoo.
Which I will have you know, I finally picked up on something musically in a movie.
I'm so proud of you!
For me, while I was listening to it, the music sounded rather Star Wars-like.
Yes, it fucking does, doesn't it?
Which makes sense because John Williams composed the soundtrack.
Yes, he did. And while this soundtrack is very good, this is not one of his best soundtracks. And so while I have known a very small handful of people who are like, oh yeah, this song, like, this movie comes up on my playlist of movie soundtracks. This one, like, it's good music, don't get me wrong. This is very good music, it is well written, it goes with the movie really well. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't stand out. None of the melodies, like, are replayable to you.
No, it doesn't have that same impact that Braveheart soundtrack had.
Unfortunately, which, I mean, at least Braveheart gets one check.
Yeah. And at least they didn't try and pretend like the soundtrack was historically accurate.
Oh, thank God, yeah. No, there's a whole different topic about historically accurate music, and, like, very glad we chose to go modern.
Yes.
But, like, it does work. It does add quite a lot. It does help build this, like, suspense, but also anticipation, and, like,
it's the fun jaunt into town music.
It is, with also having that underlying, like, without being, like, overly, like, scary movie style, like, oh, you should be getting worried. Like, it has that deeper resonance to it that kind of slowly gives you a hint, like, this is going to build. This is going to add more.
That I did not pick up on.
That's okay. Again, I'm sitting here watching this with someone whose entire major was to do this.
I know. And so in town we are introduced to Aunt Charlotte. Pretty good blend, and honestly, these shots up to this are pretty good blending of real life and matte paintings in the background.
Yeah, they look great.
It actually blends quite well. It doesn't feel like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers,
where
like,
it's flat.
Yeah, where it's very staged in the back.
Yeah, I also, like, this is something, like, I have kind of always ended up not on purpose, but always ended up watching this movie on either crappy TVs that were rolled in for high school history, or smaller TVs for, like, no goddamn reason. Like, we're on the bus and someone puts this in on the big little screen up on the high. So this was the first time that I had really had a chance to sit down with a big, nice, modern TV and watch this movie. It still looks pretty damn good. Yeah. Like, yeah, you can tell that some of it's not quite the same, like, but
it's not like it's not like Titanic, where Titanic has that, like, level where it's aged pretty poorly in areas.
Yeah, this one, like, feels fairly smooth across all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, while on the realism, the costume design was done by Deborah Lynn Scott, same costume designer for Titanic.
And guess what? She knew what she was doing. I have no complaints.
They were all made from scratch using, like, they base it off of real costumes. Like, they really went, like, the costuming and everything of this era, they put a lot of work into making it feel of the time.
No, the costuming, like, this is one of the few, especially American colonial, there's enough people who are into it that it is easy to spot when it's bad, even if you're not into costuming. Especially if you are a child of the Midwest forced to go to those reenactment shows in the summer. It slowly, like, gets ingrained into you, like, what to look for. And this movie is one of the few ones that I have almost no complaints. Like, there's a handful of things here or there that, like, she has spiced up a little bit to add color to a main character, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it works.
No. Yeah, it works quite well, and it just adds that level of depth that is needed to make this movie convincing.
I think the other reason why, like, yes, it is a lot of work, and especially for a movie that doesn't necessarily regularly get praised for its costuming, which is unfortunate. This movie deserves that. But why I think it's so, like, looked over is because it makes this movie very flawless in your believability of these characters. If they had done the Braveheart thing of just ignoring historical accuracy and gone, like, very cheesy, very, like, buckle hat and big black shoes, like, this movie wouldn't be taken seriously. But because there's, like, that level of authenticity to the acting and to the costuming and the weapon design and, like, this level of detail that, yeah, some of it's overdone, some of it's exaggerated, but not so much to, like, put anything off, to, like, make anything blaringly wrong, even to a general watcher.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot more of this, like, connection to these characters comes from. I think this is why a lot of people, like, remember this movie as being stellar, as being over-the-toply good.
Yeah, I can see that. Granted, before we decided to do this episode, or before your husband made his beautiful mistake,
which we will never let him forget the rest of his life.
I probably hadn't seen this movie since I lived in Germany, like, about when it first came out.
I think until we'd agreed to do this, and then I think I watched part of this to show Brian what movie he meant. The last time I had watched this was in high school, because we, like, had to watch part of this for a history class.
Yeah, I was... How old was I? Would I have been? When we watched the last time I remember watching this, I would have been in, like, 5th or 6th grade. You
were going a little young for this film.
I had seen Braveheart at that point, too, probably. Or, no, I saw Braveheart shortly after this. I went to the York Dungeons in 5th grade.
That is true. And I do remember that, like, while we had... I think we watched this in, like, 9th or 10th grade for, like, a history or social studies class. We did have to, like, because it was, school, you have to write the slip, be like, I am allowed to watch the movie where the man chops the other man up. But we, like, fast-forwarded through that part because, like, technically, this principal could walk in at any moment and, like, tell you no.
I also watched Signs around this time, too.
But that's a classic. Worth it.
Yeah. Gave my youngest brother his paranoia about aliens.
Good for you.
Oh, that's my parents' doing.
Good job. Beep, beep, there goes that bus. Nico's mom.
And dad, for these ones. But back to the Patriot.
Yes.
I do want to talk about initially this Aunt Charlotte character, because her introduction, she is just this awkwardly placed love interest for Mel Gibson.
No, she's awkward the entire time.
Yeah. She has, like, 4 or 5 scenes in this whole thing?
Yeah, not even flashbacks on, like, why he should care about her.
Yeah.
It's just, like, stated, like, hey, he kind of, like, likes her.
Other than she's the dead wife's sister?
Yeah, a little creepy there. Well, okay, as someone whose family is proudly from, like, quote-unquote, the redneck part of the country, this is a little too close to home here.
Yeah.
This is a little weird, guys.
I mean...
Like, okay, if this was based more solidly on a real historical figure, I would have been like, yeah, okay, old-timey times, whatever. Like, weird, but this happens.
Well...
But this is a completely fictional man in a completely fictional history of America. We couldn't have found another woman that he knows.
Royalty. I don't know. They got it. I don't know. Otherwise, well, they have to add an Aunt Charlotte, because otherwise, why are the kids hanging out with her? Why else?
This man is not allowed to have friends?
No, he lives in the middle of nowhere.
Still.
He gets mail once a week, and that's his children's excitement.
This is true. This man lives a very solitary life. But really? We couldn't have thought of literally any other connection for this person other than his dead wife's sister, who's now his romantic interest?
It's better than being his cousin.
It's close. We are a half step away from cousin.
No, there's a pretty... Well...
No.
Documentaries will say otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an awkward moment. And on top of that, we get this next bit where there's protests at night and Gabriel's out on the town and flirting with Anne, I think is her name.
Yeah,
which,
whatever.
Rewatching it after all these years of not seeing it, honestly, like...
I had forgotten about this part, I'm not gonna lie.
This whole Gabriel Anne, while cute...
Yeah. I don't care.
It just adds a lot of fluff to this movie that it doesn't need, because it's... I mean, granted, I know this part's supposed to be like, okay, dad's got his love interest, son's got his love interest, we're doing parallel stories.
But I think there are 2 different love stories here, and one of them works and the other one doesn't.
I don't think either of them work.
I don't think either of them are good. Let me rephrase. Neither are good. However, the son's love interest, because we've got that lens of him being young, feels like a young, flirty, like, just, puppies and kittens sort of love interest. Like, it's cute. It's a side thing. I don't care if it works or doesn't work. Like, it's just a little bit of humor and lightness to the movie. The adult love interest here comes off a little weird, and we fall very close once again to a common Mel Gibson movie problem of the ladies not really doing anything other than being the love interest.
Yeah.
Granted, the reason why I say close is because later on in this movie she does kind of sort of do a little bit of something.
Or dying.
There's a lot
the first Mad Max as well.
Yes. Like I said, the love interest is there to die so that the man can get a superpower to kill a lot of people. Or to motivate him afterwards with a kiss. One of the two. Yeah. And this one, luckily, she does like a little half step extra of something. She babysits for him. But like, really, this is like, she doesn't have any personality. She's so dry. And it is not the actress's fault here, I think. She just doesn't have any screen time. She's on here for like all of a half second.
Yeah.
Like for how long this movie is, this love interest is on here for like barely no time.
Yeah, there's well, that's the thing with like a lot of these characters too, is just like if they had condensed it down really to just maybe if it was Mel Gibson or Benjamin and Gabriel's story.
Yeah.
Would have been about a half hour shorter.
Yeah, sure would have, and I would not have missed a single minute.
Exactly.
And I still think that the son's goofy love interest still would have worked, because when you're that young, like, you fall fast and hard, and it doesn't really matter because it's like silly little fun bit for the movie.
It's also there to maybe show that this is what Benjamin used to be like.
Yeah, which like I don't fucking care.
Exactly.
I do not care about this man.
Yeah, but also this part's just to show it's a contrasting scene from going from peaceful country patriot bread to oh shit, we're about to go to war, guys.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily hate. I mean, again, this is like historical drama sort of thing. It works.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, maybe not the most smoothly done, but it's fine.
Yeah. No, and I mean that's the thing that leads into like the assembly time as well, where
the assembly. We will have words about you.
It's an important part.
It is. And
I do like that they dived into the history enough, and it's a good way of showing how the colonies were actually divided, because
yes.
In a lot of these war movies, it's always, everyone was for separation. It's no, about 20% were loyalists.
Yeah,
The percentage of patriots was never the majority. I think estimates were like 40 to 45% of the population.
Yeah, and like, especially with modern war, especially like early American history films, like, it is much easier to just divide everyone into two groups, for and against. And, like, this movie does do a nice job of being like, oh, what about the third option? None. Yeah. Neither.
Well, and even in the commentary, they kind of touched on it, but didn't really dive into it. I also think it's important to note that while we like to portray the Revolutionary War against tyranny as, like, a people's revolution.
Sure. I mean, that's how our history books are written.
It was
not necessarily straightforward.
Yeah.
There was more to it. We just,
and it was also done by the aristocracy and the wealthy. George Washington was the 12th great grandson of Edward III of England, who was the son of the prince from Braveheart.
Yes. And on top of that, like, I don't think our history books have done a great job of explaining, like, how young a lot of our early leaders were. A lot of them were in their early 20s, early 30s at best. And so I will give this movie some leeway as far as, like, we gotta, like, stretch things around to fit the actors we have picked. Mel Gibson does not look like an early 20s man.
No, because he's not an early 20s man. He's one of the elders. That's why he's been assembled to the Council of the Patriots.
Yeah. It all functions. It's not my favorite, but it's, like, it does work. It's fine. But again, this movie is so long that, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna immediately forget about this part.
Well, and I think that's a little bit of a shame, just because there are some good points to this scene.
There are.
It's a good way of pointing out of Benjamin's neutrality, where he sees both forms of government can be just as oppressive. He wants to try and still continue the peaceful ways and try and not really be a pacifist, but just, hey, we still have options. We can talk it out.
And also kind of really nailing home this idea that, like, he lives out in the middle of fuck nowhere. And, like, these problems don't really affect him all that much.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
But, I mean, it's also a way to build, once again, Benjamin's character, that there's some fury from the Wilderness Campaign, which...
Yeah.
This was an attack on a fictional fort that never existed, as far as I could find.
I also do not believe this actually... Like, there are similarities to real events.
Yeah.
Not close enough, though, to be like, that one.
Again, why this movie does well, because it's like, okay, I can see where you pulled this, but you guys made your own with it.
I also think that, like, I can see where they pulled it, and they kept the timeline small enough that we're not pulling from, like, clearly the wrong, century.
Yeah, and the Wilderness Campaign they're talking about happened during the French Indian Wars.
Yeah, so, close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Also, there is parts that I don't like about the scene, too.
Yeah.
Where the children are so clearly confused, and I question with them not knowing anything.
Especially with how, like, proactive and family-oriented that Mel's character has been this whole time. Especially with his older son, like, he very much seems like the kind of dad who, like, especially with the older one, being like, sitting him down, talking him through, like, what is happening? Like, it's mail day. Let me read you and explain the mail.
Or no one's talked to them about it, or why he has a what is it, Cherokee, or it's a Comanche? I forget. He has a tomahawk.
He does have a tomahawk. Something that doesn't really ever get addressed, and something that as we go through this movie, we will talk more about. Because much like the slave problem, this movie ignores another very large group of people living in the Americas at this time.
Yeah, the Native Americans.
Yeah. This movie does a lot right. It also does a lot wrong.
Yeah. No,
Especially for a movie that regularly gets pointed to as, like, a good example of American history.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But one thing I do also like about this scene is that it puts him as a character to the test. And he's not a really there's not a rallying point for him. Which
I would get behind if it wasn't such a trope with Mel Gibson.
I think we've also we're a little burnt out on
I'll give you
Gibson
that.
saga.
I will give you that. But this is exactly why my husband got these two movies confused.
A bit.
It's very similar. A little less young and free-spirited, but we got some same themes here happening.
Yeah, but, I mean, for me, it's a good scene of him establishing Benjamin as a character.
Yeah, I mean, it does work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. But, in the end, South Carolina joins the war, and Gabriel enlists to the dissatisfaction of his father. But I also like that he's better off trying to keep him safe and his friend is trying to keep himself. He's like, I'll make him a mess boy. Showing that, like, the times haven't changed of the wealthy protecting their heirs while the others go to die.
Yeah. I mean, granted, this movie does it in a very, like, cute, sort of, like, family-oriented sort of way, but yeah.
Yeah. And we do get a nice little transition of the start of the war where we have the "Don't Tread on Me" flag transition into the Union Jack. It's a nice way to quickly show. Again, they do some parts where they do a good job of showing without telling.
Yeah.
Where they show the fall of Charleston.
Yeah, and then
Charlestown.
And then, we kind of skip over some other rather important bits.
Yeah. And this is really the beginning of the father and son plotline where it's more new thoughts versus old thoughts.
Which I don't hate.
Yeah. And Benjamin is rather economical in his method, which is thrown out the window after the first death.
Yeah, sure fucking is, isn't it?
And Gabriel's is more politically motivated. Well, and I'll say Benjamin's is also more, he's seen the horrors, he's seen some shit, and so he doesn't want his children to see the same shit.
Yeah, which, I mean, I do applaud this movie for trying its best to, like, make both sides appealing, the father and the son's point of view. Again, though, we spend so much time staring at Mel Gibson's character that, like, we kind of forget that the son has his own thoughts and opinions until he's, like, arguing with his father.
Yeah. Which doesn't really, it gets brought up, but it feels just more like tension points to drive the movie and doesn't really feel like real interactions.
Yeah. Like, I will applaud them for making Benjamin's character, like, fairly well-rounded. Like, he has interests and hobbies and a family that he obviously is attached to, and, like, we get to see that, which is nice. His sons are a little bit shallow, which is not a problem for one of them, because he's gonna die. but
A couple of them are gonna die.
yeah, a few of them are gonna die.
He's got 8 more backup.
This is true. But where I think the movie spent an awful lot of time trying to set up this idealistic America, we could have potentially added a little bit more into at least some of the kids who are not going to immediately die.
Yeah.
So that way I can feel like they're a young adult trying to come into the world as opposed to how the father sees them, which is a dumbass child.
To be fair.
Some of them are dumbass children.
Yes.
Some of them are, but some of them are, like, not children by colonial America standards.
Yeah, as we learned in Braveheart, they'd be men.
They be men.
But we also get a nice transition showing Gabriel learning the harsh realities of war.
Yeah.
It's not as chalked up as he thought it would be. His friends are dying next to him, and
Yeah, no, this part works. Again,
Mhm.
I am going to forget this part of the movie very quickly.
yeah, because we immediately go back to the home where
Yeah.
it's nice and peaceful,
Yeah.
where the bro is sending letters and giving inspiration to the even younger ones who are like, "Oh yay, war's going good."
Yeah,
Like-
huzzah!
Yeah. I mean, the second oldest one puts on his father's old war garb is a good way of showing the influence that's having on it.
That's true.
And mind you, it's also a red coat.
Yes, it is.
And
There's a lot of, like, I know the movie tries to explain where Benjamin gets a lot of this stuff, but Benjamin's a busy man. Benjamin has a lot of early America paraphernalia to tie him to a lot of different groups.
in his younger days, before he started up, rustic, Patriot bread.
Yeah, whole wheat.
Whole wheat. He obviously he's traveled.
No, and I don't hate that. It's just, like, this movie throws a lot at you.
It's the same. I know why you don't like it. It's because it's the same way they did with Braveheart, where he just randomly will speak French now and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this is a lot more subtle, so, like, it's easy to forget and kind of overlook and forgive, whereas Braveheart, like, really shoved it down your throat when you had forgotten fully about the French-speaking bit.
Yeah.
So, like, this isn't the worst, it's not movie-breaking for me, it's just like, boy, this man's been very busy, and he's like, what, 40-something years old? Damn, we've been doing a lot.
I don't know, because, I mean, he does mention that he enlisted at 17, which he makes the deal with the son of, like, you can do whatever you want when you're 17.
You were an adult, yeah.
Surprised he doesn't have this understanding with the other child.
Yeah, well, he's looked at that one deep in the eyes and went, there's not much thought behind them eyes.
To be fair, he's also the oldest one, so
Yeah,
of course he's going to be more protective of that one.
Yeah, we got spares hanging out in the
Yeah.
back, just in case.
But, I mean, it's a good way of him showing that he's clearly haunted.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it works.
In the morning, war has come to them.
And we finally get to the part of the movie that I remember.
Yeah, because, well, it's a little horror-like.
It is. I also think that, like, this part of the movie does a fantastic job of having that abrupt 180 feel
Mm-hmm.
from, like, the nice sunshiny, we make whole wheat bread and sell it to you for $1.25 to, like, oh yeah, also, like, we're gonna kill all your family.
Yeah, because we have our first moment of blood because we see a bloody hand skulking about.
Yes.
Because war is finally here and Gabriel is back, but returning without his coat on either.
What are you doing, son?
And then he recounts the Green Dragoons plowing through some of the regulars. It's also a way to show that the war is not what he thought it would be, as they're not following the quote-unquote rules that he understood it to be.
Yeah, he's thinking of war in, like, the old English, like, very, like, formal setting, as opposed to, like, the messy reality.
Yeah. Also, out of curiosity, I looked this up, why they were called Dragoons, because I'm sure, like, some of our listeners are out there
Yes.
only know the term as a class in Final Fantasy.
Oh, yeah, okay, continue on.
A Dragoon is a member of the British Cavalry Regiment, with their names coming from the short muskets they carried, called the Dragon.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. That's kind of cool.
I don't know why Final Fantasy went with spears, but...
Well, I think I know. Because they looked at the actual firearm and went, that doesn't really vibe.
Spears.
Spears are a little bit cooler.
To be fair, that is what horsemen would normally use, so...
I mean, not during this time period.
Yeah. But I also like that regardless of the horrors that, what's his name?
Son 1.
Son 1. The hot son.
It's the hot son.
Should not even think about the other children.
Honestly, consider the rest of the children as children, and then that one is son.
Yeah, pretty much. The semi-alive son at this point.
Yeah. Yes.
I do like that despite he's still dedicated to the cause because he's still determined to deliver his letters.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's not a complete, like, ditcher.
Mm-hmm.
He's just didn't really, for some reason, somehow, didn't understand what he was signing up for.
Yeah.
Despite living with a father who probably told him.
No, as far as the movie tells us, they know nothing that his father's a quote-unquote war hero.
That's true, which is so strange, but okay.
Yeah. But in the morning, the wounded are being tended to, but the redcoats are there. And I like that by the time the Green Dragoon guy shows up,
yeah,
he's already going to make an example out of burning it all.
Once again, much like the other Mel Gibson films, we do have a tendency to light things on fire in this film. Yeah. Not as much, lot less stuff on fire, but I will give them this. Fire is very dramatic.
I don't think Gibson's character lights anything on fire.
Not this time, but a lot of stuff ends up on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But also this is the part where we learn that the farmhands are freedmen.
Which is a very interesting little tidbit to throw in, because, like, sure.
Yeah.
Historical movie.
And, I mean, in this movie, they're forced to join the English side one way or the other.
I mean,
but
it wouldn't have mattered free or not. They would have been joining the war.
And the director even brought it up in the commentary that they were criticized for not making Benjamin a slave owner and trying to make it making it politically incorrect for the time. And I actually kind of agree with that sentiment, because he does bring up that there was a small percentage of slave owners, or not slave owners, people who worked with freed African Americans.
This is true.
But again, it was such a small percentage that just doesn't mesh with the rest of the movie. And this is the only time we hear about it. Like, it's not a big plot of the movie. It's just like, Benjamin's a good guy.
Yeah.
Making whole wheat bread, Patriot bread.
And I think part of the reason why it received as much criticism as it did is not necessarily solely for the historical sidestepping of, like, the slavery issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because this movie goes really out of its way to mush so many people into one character.
Yes.
That, like, he's already a war hero who happens to be best friends with a Native American tribe. We haven't gotten to that yet, but, like, we'll get there, kind of, sort of, not really.
No, he's not
No, he just has a tomahawk. There's they've mushed so much, like, he's got so many very distinct characteristics that, like, this is one on top of them. Like, he's the smallest percentage of people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't feel realistic anymore.
No, not at all.
Nobody is all of these things.
Yeah, it's he's a little too pure.
Yes.
Yeah, but the one thing I do like about the scene is the way they make Tavington such an asshole from the very beginning.
Yes, I love it.
The guy who plays him, what's his name?
You know him.
Jason Isaacs.
Yes.
Isn't he Lucius Malfoy?
I
might be completely wrong on this one.
Yes, he is Lucius Malfoy.
Yes, I was right for once.
And we've always known that he is fantastic at an asshole British person portrayal. That's why he gets to play one a lot. But I also think that he really does a great job of bringing in this malice to counteract the Benjamin character's, like, goody two-shoesness.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of the other criticism, the other half of the criticism was there was no really good representation of the English in this film. Granted, this is a war film solely from the American point of view. However, this is a pretty good bad guy.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one thing that I was looking into, because even the director said he wanted to make him bad, but not to the extremes of the Nazis. Which
I understand. That's a very big extreme.
He did get some shit on by, like, forget which critic. Some critic is like, maybe he's trying to cover up for what his people did in World War II. It's like, that's a bit of a stretch.
That is a bit of a stretch. However, like, this is a pretty bad guy.
But yeah, the counterpoint, and like you brought it up, this movie is specifically set in America from a South Carolina perspective of a patriot.
Oh, the most patriot man.
So of course they're gonna make the Brits to be the worst people in this movie.
Yes. I also think it works because, like, while it is, like, stated, like, look, all of the Brits are invading, it's really, like, one Brit in his army.
That we really see for the most part.
So, like, it is over the top. But, like, the rest of the movie is over... Like, it matches energies pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's not blaringly like, wow, the British are terrible people.
Yeah.
It's like this one British guy is really just out of pocket.
But to be fair, he is loosely based on Bannister or Tarleton, which, from what I'm reading-wise,
yes.
he was actually a really horrible person.
Oh,
He and his men slaughtered 113 American soldiers and wounded 150 at Waxhaws. In 1780, which probably inspired Gabriel's story.
I believe so.
And I mean, this is the personification of the boogeyman of the tale that Benjamin's character is equally going to become the British boogeyman with the white ghost, or William Wallace's legendary anal lightning blasts.
Yes. No, like they are both completely over the top. Like, they are so many people squished together that they are both, like, not real anymore, that because they are both so unrealistic. Like, one is the most goody two-shoes patriot man to ever walk this planet, and then the other one is the, like, vile interpretation of the bad thing in the war.
Yeah,
so, like, it works, because they are both unreasonable.
Yeah. In a way, yeah, it does. There is a clear black and white side to this. Well...
There is no. This movie goes out of its way to make it seem like everything Benjamin is about to do, worth it.
Benjamin has a slight tinge of gray to him.
Yeah, but the way that this movie is about to do it, you feel no remorse.
Yeah, because it's quickly like, oh, don't do it that way. Okay, well, I won't ever do it again like that.
Yeah, they very quickly go, like, past this murder part, don't they?
Yeah. Well, because, so at this point, Tabington is going to have all the rebels killed, because remember, this technically is a rebellion.
And this is war.
Yeah. And the other son tries to save Gabriel, but is killed.
Oh yeah, we should rename this son Stupid Son.
I mean...
No, Stupid Son. Look at him.
Yeah, to be fair, he's been empowered by Gabriel.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Which forces the father into a little bit of action, which Revenge immediately kills his own... He kills his own principles to begin with. He's like, oh, I won't get into this war. We should work it out.
Until it's my own children on the line. Yeah.
But, I mean, to be fair, all's lost. His farm's being burned down. He saves his war gear, though.
All three of his definitely not slaves have been taken from him.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good way of showing the two sides of the conflict, and... the other thing I'd like to is, like, they do bring it up that there's the first British guy who shows up who clearly knows Gabriel's a spy, was going to let them live because he was taking care of their troops as well. At this point, he was almost Switzerland. Yes.
Well, also, like, they get very close to discussing the, like, complexities of the Civil War because like we said earlier, like, this movie does a great job of making it black and white because this is a patriotic themed movie.
Yep.
But, like, the war was much more, like, nuanced than this because, again, there was no cell phones, there was no instant communication, so it was kind of like one general just kind of doing what he felt and then waiting for, like, some guy to tell him what the rest of everyone was happening. Like, there was no instant communication.
Yeah.
So, like, if you got lucky and there was a guy who was like, oh, no, I feel like this is, neutral territory because these are all wounded people. Mm-hmm. You could get lucky. That could happen. But you could also get this asshole who's like, no, burn it all.
Yep. Which, he has now made it personal.
Yes. And that was the wrong choice because this is the most patriotic motherfucker on the planet.
It's time for action. Which, I do like that the boys are terrified. They're clearly terrified. And he's brought his last two remaining sons in.
We think. I mean, this man probably has more children somewhere.
He's got a daughter somewhere.
fuck her. She's not important. Sons only.
She's a little, 2-year-old.
Yeah, we don't care about her.
Yeah, true. He forgets about her quite a bit, too.
He leaves her somewhere.
He leaves her in a slave town, and it's such a small point of her hating him that I forgot about it, honestly.
I honestly forget that she is a child that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, this is a common theme with this series styles of movies. I don't think they meant for us to read into it this much, but again, a little odd. We do. Yeah, a little odd. A little upsetting.
But I like the whole setting this up. Aim small, miss small, setting up multiple locations. It's very much setting up the order versus the perceived chaos that's going to ensue for the British.
I also like that this part does a nice job of, taking some, reality logic is oh, well, they know the land. These children have definitely gone hunting before. This is very believable on why, them being a surprise attack with these children would work.
Yeah. The action's very flashy and cool.
It is. It looks good. The music does help quite a lot. Can't remember what the music is, but it does help.
Yeah, there's a good moment in this where Gabriel's held at knife point, and there's that very tense moment. And
yes.
This is the scene that caused this entire episode.
Yes, it is, because this is the scene that for some reason my husband contributed to the Scottish movie.
Yeah, where he throws the hatchet into the dude's head.
Yes, I don't know why my husband thought hatchet Scottish, but, close enough.
Not even a hatchet, a tomahawk, if we're going to be accurate.
That is true. And it's not even maybe it's a hatchet, maybe. No, it is very tomahawk.
Yeah, he got it from Leif Erikson on his trip to North America, somehow.
They really don't explain that very well.
But I also like that moment, too, because it just shows Heath Ledger's acting chops in this movie.
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
The clear, sheer terror he has. And then on top of that, the butchering. Here's why the butchering in this scene works so much better than in Braveheart.
Uh-huh.
It's because, as we bring up multiple times with Guillermo del Toro mentioning, sometimes it's better when you imagine what's happening.
Completely agree. Don't get me wrong, this scene is very bloody and it is graphic in its own nature, but it is not Braveheart showing the guy's arm getting chopped off or shot in the butt.
Exactly.
Which, honestly, because of the shock factor, and depending on how well you do your special effects and timing and cameraing, comes off sometimes as a little humorous, even when it's not meant to be.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas this one does a great job, because I only see a portion of it, because of, honestly, some stellar acting right here. This is very, this sticks into a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. And can you imagine just being these kids, all of a sudden your pacifist dad is butchering an entire brigade, and not just, murdering a bunch of brigade, and then absolutely butchering a man in front of you.
I would feel a little bit my father is a crazy badass. I am terrified, but good for him. Also, I would be questioning my status, where am I in my father's line of favorite children? I don't feel like I'm up here with murdering an entire platoon of English people.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm maybe down here under Silently Weep.
Just a bit. And so now I think it's the time to bring up that Benjamin is loosely based off Francis Marion, also known as the Swamp Fox, and nicknamed by the Brits for his elusive tactics.
I know Swamp Fox is supposed to be a cool name, however, we slowly are creeping up on Swamp Ass season, and that's all I can think of.
I don't blame you. And Marion, he participated in fighting against the Cherokee Indians in 1795.
Yeah, so
he did horrible things, and there are some things that
there's some parallels.
There are parallels,
yeah.
And also one of the critics was bitching about how he was a serial rapist, he raped his slaves, which I learned was not true. He actually had a good relationship with the people he owned.
Which is a problem statement in and of itself.
I know. For the time.
However, much like the rest of Benjamin's character, a lot of these stories are a lot of other people mushed together. While we can definitely attribute certain acts to him, the overwhelming census of how he was to his slaves is probably from someone else down the road.
No, it's based off Marion.
No, I know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's the thing that they bring in so many elements that just don't
matter.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't really add anything to the movie.
I will give them credit where they know that they are basing this off of someone, they do not tell you.
No, which I think is great too, because
I completely think this is much better, because from a general watcher, no one is going to Google this.
No, exactly.
Like, you have to be the biggest history nerd to even find this out, or like really be into research.
And the other thing they do too that I think is great, they don't start or end with inspired by true events, because every time I look those movies up and it just pisses me off every time I see it.
The only time I like it is when it is so far off of left field that you're like, no, incorrect, wrong.
Like, there was one that I remember. I watched it with my dad called Backcountry, about a couple that gets lost and hunted by a black bear.
Yes.
I
remember the real story that it was loosely based off of.
Weirdly enough, that movie was pretty granted, I always took liberties, but it was pretty accurate for what happened. The only thing that changed was the boyfriend-girlfriend dynamic was swapped.
Yes,
because they wanted to make the movie more compelling, because of course it's more compelling if the woman survives it.
Yeah. There's a lot of those, and those are my favorite, but not because they're generally labeled as good. Exactly. Like, this is an easy way as a movie director and writer to like instantly bump your movie from like, wow, this is probably going to be fun but garbage, to, oh, this is a fun movie. Like, it removes the garbage stereotype. Well,
and I think it's more so seen in horror events or horror movies, because
yes,
it ties into the fears of people thinking, oh wait, this could be real.
Yes, I think we've finally exited that phenomenon with the more recent real-ish horrors, because those ones at least like portray themselves in the more modern, like based off of real events, which nowadays is I watched it on YouTube. So like we've got a new branding that I'm sure in 20 years people are gonna be like, this is like based off of this styling, that's how I know it's fake. But like for now, we're progressing, we're getting there.
Yeah. So from here we cut to the British camp, where we learn that 3 killed 20. The legend of the White Ghost is born.
Pretty badass name, not gonna lie.
Yeah, which the soldiers are supposed to believe that Benjamin was like a ghost, but I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. This movie, this is where I can see why people who are really into like very patriotic stylings and movies, like this is the part I can see why this movie stands out for that sort of audience.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm with you. I don't see it. I don't really follow it. But I can see as if you are already, like, in that mindset, or you are here for that sort of style, you could grasp onto that.
Yeah, just a bit. And also we get this bit where Captain Wickens, portrayed by Adam Baldwin. All the Baldwins look very similar to each other.
They really do, don't they?
Yeah. We learned that he is now in the war, but he sided with the Loyalists. Or he sided with the British Army. We also learned that Colonel William Tabington's cruelty comes from looking down on the colonists and anyone. Like, he just has this disdain of, like, oh, you were born in America, you're not a real Brit.
That is correct, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. Granted, this is a part of the movie where, like, because this movie is aimed at and written for hyper-American patriotism, this sort of mindset doesn't make a ton of sense as far as, like, a motive for bad guys. Solely because this is, like, a very, like, you need to, like, have a more complex working of the history of this time period to understand, like, where this mindset is coming from. But it's not wrong, and I don't hate it, but it's not necessary because, like, this is the boogeyman.
True. Yeah, he's supposed to be all-consuming evil.
Yeah, like, honestly, if he just liked killing people for the sake of it and that's why he joined the war, I would have been like, check, no problem, done, love it.
Yeah.
But he's doing it because he's like, how dare you live in America that we own.
It's kind of like, it's a little bit reverse of how people of different, people who aren't white, they're like, well, where are you from? I'm from California. But where were you from before?
Don't say those words out loud. I've had family members say that. We've had to have long talks about how you can't ask people
I've known
that.
you had family who say that, too.
They've gotten better. Still don't fully understand it, but they're old. And they will get there maybe... probably not. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But, like,
Let's move on.
But, like, no, it is the same, like, dialogue in a different time period, but unfortunately, like, it's lost in this, like, but, like, he's here to kill children. Sort of like boogeyman mentality.
The children has smacked a British officer, which, by the way, I did look up the laws of the era.
Oh, I love old-timey laws.
Oh my god. The
Yes.
Articles of War,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the hell they're called.
Yeah,
There's
rules.
like 38 of them.
That's
like,
surprisingly few.
well, here's the thing. Almost all of them are like, if determined by the higher-ups,
Yes.
punishable by death. Punishable by death.
But also remember, again, that the higher-ups probably are, like, whoever's currently standing there that's the highest rank. It's not like whoever's in charge of the whole thing. Because that man is very far away.
Yeah.
And there is no way to contact them. Not
Yeah.
not quickly enough to decide whether or not we should murder these people. So, like, again, is this a fun, patriotic, styling movie? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it historically well-rounded? No.
It tries to be.
It tries better than others.
Yes. But a little too hard.
Yeah, it adds a lot to a lot of characters, but also not enough to other characters.
Yeah. Which, speaking of other characters that we've forgotten about by this point,
Honestly, yeah, most of them.
we're on to Aunt Charlotte's, where Benjamin is regretful for letting his rage take over.
I'm not gonna lie, by this point in the movie, even though we literally just saw this woman, I had forgotten that this was the love interest again.
And she's not, she's only the hero of like, I'm so glad you're safe.
That's all she does.
Yeah.
And, like, granted, like, later on, she's like, don't burn in the house, everyone out. Like, that's it. That's all this woman does.
Well,
It's kind of disappointing.
And the only other part she has, because Gabriel is off again, kind of butts heads with Benjamin.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, Benjamin and Gabriel's story throughout this whole thing, good.
Mm-hmm.
It's entertaining, it's compelling, it's very drama-based. Why is we here? Why are we in her house? Other than to remind us that he has other children that he kind of sort of loves.
The closest family he can get to.
Yeah, I don't love it.
The closest he can get to in the ways he wants to get to.
Yes, that's part of the reason why I don't love it.
I've seen many documentaries involving families and babysitters.
Yep, same. I don't like it.
Nope, not at all.
like
It's
it.
fucking weird. But I get Benjamin. He's definitely justifiably upset. I mean, he just went through all this to save his son. And his son's. It's like, and actually, what I know of God of War.
Okay.
Makes me think of this a little bit, where it's like, boy, and then the boy does what boy does. Boy.
Honestly, I think you're kind of somehow onto something. I think the difference is the father-son relationship growth in God of War, the two newer God of Wars.
Yeah.
Because while I haven't played them, I have been forced to sit and watch them played like a cinematic trailer.
I have never played a single one of them, and I've seen Brian play through, like, part of a chapter of a story once.
I was forced to watch them. He played them back-to-back twice, 100% completion rate. So I have seen all of God of War. And honestly, I think the father-son dynamic of God of War is what the Patriot was kind of going for. But not as compelling, because God of War, while having quite a lot of side characters, those side characters are given characteristics, but we use preconceived notions like Thor, like Odin, where you already know enough about that character that you don't need to be told everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we have time to focus on that father-son dynamic. Whereas this movie spends all of its time with completely, like, real history, all fake people.
Yeah. Father-son butt heads. 20 scenes. Father-son butt heads again. 20 more scenes. Father and son somewhat butt heads.
Yes, but the whole time in between, like, we do love each other, but the other one is wrong. Also, there's side people.
Yeah.
And it's the side people that I think are messing up the father-son dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
Because, honestly, the Patriots, like, father-son dynamic is pretty good. Like, it's very, like, drama-based, it's very over-the-top, but, like, you do get because both actors are so good at, like, portraying these two different characters, you do get a very nice, well-rounded idea of, like, one is young and hot-headed and unsure, but, like, ready to fight. He's, like, ready to, like, live out this life that, like, all he's known is living in America. Whereas his father is, like, much more well-rounded. He's got this, like, hesitancy because he's seen some shit.
Yeah.
And now he's killed a lot of people.
Well, and that hesitancy's not there anymore because he's off to war, too. They have a little bit of a bonding moment watching General Gates have a battle and them losing because...
I do love that they just stand, like, very Midwestern style, like, stand on the front porch and watch the tornado sort of thing, where they're just, like, watching the battle from the front porch. No one's like, hey, kids, get inside. Hey, we should, like...
Yeah.
No, they're just standing there watching it.
They're at some office building, which I think gets reused in a scene later on.
Yeah, I don't care.
But the faraway shots actually use CGI. And one thing, while the cannonball itself has not aged the best.
No, it hasn't.
The gore and violence is great.
I fully agree.
And I like that the director was like, yeah, we did our research and, most movies show cannonballs kind of like mortar rounds making big explosions.
That's wrong.
Nope, this was big chunks of metal flying at 60 miles an hour. It was more to maim and kill people instead of explode.
Yes, which... Granted, again, as any Midwestern kid forced to go to these recreation, like, historical wars, this is something that's very easy to pinpoint and, like, point at and be like, oh, that's not right. It's cool, but it's not right. Even if you're not into that sort of stuff. So, like, granted, like, yes, some of it doesn't look the best, but because they went with a more, like, realistic approach for, like, the damage, the, like, smoke, the, like, giant explosion, how all of the war, like, colliding hit. I honestly like this scene.
Yeah, I mean, my brother sent me a video the other day of some heavy round of like what it would do to a human body, and
yeah, put a hole through you. That's what it do.
It did a lot more than that.
Yeah, you'd be gone. Yeah,
there was a head.
Yeah.
I forget what round it was, but it was impressive. But now we go to the rebel camp, and Gates has left. He's abandoned the cause, and Benjamin is signing up for the cause.
Go, Benjamin! Finally.
Yeah, and we learned the whole strategy of the rebellion is to stall until the French arrives, where we were introduced to the only Frenchie of the movie.
Yes.
Who it was only added to show the French involvement in the war, and is loosely based on Lafayette.
Yeah. I mean, again, this movie gets very close to getting the history right, while still not being super accurate, but it's close enough that, like, you don't super care. Because, again, this movie is so focused on being hyper-modern American patriotic.
Yeah.
So, like, whatever. I guess fine. Like, we've already fucked up the rest of it, let's just keep going.
Yeah. I also don't believe that Benjamin's joining for the cause.
I don't either. I think he's joining so he doesn't get arrested for murder.
No, he's joining the side that didn't kill his kid. That's really the only reason he's only out there for revenge. He doesn't believe in a separate America. He's like, you killed my boy.
No, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Which, I mean...
Which is fine. And, like, again, like, because this movie doesn't, like, hyper-fixate on any of the actual political parts of this movie... It works, and it still maintains that hyper-patrioticism.
Yeah. Well, and it's also just it's a way to kill the asshole and using the war as an excuse to get to him, because in everyday life, he's not going to be able to get to Tavington in a normal manner.
This is true. That is, yeah, you got a point.
Yeah. Which, he trusts no one else in his life, and now Benjamin and Gabriel are bonding over war, and he needs a good wingman to work the lands with him, because he's every foxhole and every stream.
Honestly, not a bad war tactic. A little strange that, like, we're now a little bit too gung-ho to put our children back on the line. Again, we seem to have a hierarchy of who is allowed to live and when.
To be fair, he's not putting his child on the line. Gabriel volunteered to be on the line from the get-go.
This is true. This is true. Do feel a little bit like it's like, oh, well, if you're gonna die, at least die where I can see you.
Yeah. Yeah. But we cut to the Brits where Tavington is called in for a tongue lashing, forced to play nice.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Gabriel travels to a town with bluecoats hanging outside. He's there to look for recruits.
Again, whatever.
Everyone being tested on their patriotism, and this is the town where Anna lives, and she gives a speech of like, weren't you just talking about your patriotism the other day? Weren't you talking about how you hate the oppressive British? Her speech is shit, though.
Oh, her speech is shit. The only thing that this speech really does is add another level to this like modern patriotism.
Well, it was because the director wanted to bring out that some women were also outspoken during this time, and it's like...
Yeah, this is the lamest way to portray the, like, women involvement in the war. There were so many other badass ways to have done that, and we chose the yelling at men version.
Yeah, and it's not...
She couldn't have taken up... Like, there were ones who took up arms to protect their own homes. There were those who chose to go and work med stations, despite having no medical practice. Which, honestly, you had the same survival rates as, like, someone with a doctor. So, like, might as well. Like, this woman, all she does is stand there and go, "Be for America! Oh, I need to herd these children that aren't mine. They're my sisters."
Yeah, pretty much. It's just very much so, like, the same sentimentality shared between them, and that's why they bond finally.
I hate it.
I do, too. And it's just a stupid thing to bring them together. And there was a bad sex joke in it of, "I'd like to go for a ride with your daughter," or some shit like that.
There is, I think, also the only real reason that this is in here is to remind the audience that this woman is alive.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna lie, she's on screen. It takes me a second to be like, "Oh yeah, that's the love interest," and then like she's gone and I forget about her.
All the love interests in this movie.
Yeah. Honestly, the teenage love interest I remember just slightly more because there is humor there.
Yeah, we get a little bit of it later on, but, like, that's the part I remember more so.
Same. That is the more interesting. Honestly, it's got less involved, and I'm more interested in that.
Yeah. Even the Reverend's in for it.
Go, Reverend.
Sometimes you have to protect your flock.
Stupid. I hate it.
Yes. And so the father has his own approach.
Of course he does.
He goes to the rowdiest and roughest bar he can find and says... it says something along like "Hail the British" or something. It's not "Hail the British."
It's something along the lines of like, "Do you want to fight?" And they're like, "Yeah, we want to fight."
Do you want to fight for the British? He's trying to like stir them up to be like, "Hey, this is a patriot bar, America."
Yeah. No, it's a little dumb, but honestly, not the worst since we really haven't seen this character show other than being familiar with the landscape and like previous war. / the ability to chop a man into little bits. He doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of, like, leadership skills.
No.
We're just kind of told he has them.
Yeah, or that he has enough charisma to lead a war. Very much so, like William Wallace.
Yeah. I will say, though, where they try very hard to convince the audience with William Wallace, but forget all of his actual leadership skills, like being educated and speaking multiple languages and going to school for war. I will give them credit where Benjamin is genuinely more charismatic. And while his tactics are not very, like, highbrow, they are logical. And so, like, while they're not the best, they do work. And this movie's already so freaking long. So, like, why not?
Yeah,
this is fine.
It's a little bit of humor that's supposed to have, like, there's the guy who volunteers as slave, and then his old war buddy, John Billings, who has a feisty little redhead child who wants to kill the Brits.
Yeah, like, it's meant to be kind of, like, dark humory. I don't think it quite hits for the dark humor part, but, like, it is at least moving some stuff along.
I wouldn't consider it dark humor. It's just there to, like, also, like, just build up that his legends building of, like...
Yeah.
He has gone from killing only 30 men to now killing 200 men or some shit, even though he's only been in one battle so far.
This is true.
We also learned it's a Cherokee Tomahawk.
Yeah, again, though, there's a lot of questions here.
Yep. And from here, we cut to swamp camping with the first soldier melted for a bullet, which is a good use of symbols.
Yes.
And I remember it playing a bigger part, but rewatching it only happens a couple times.
But it does, like, image-wise stick out very well, nicely. Like, It looks good cinematography-wise.
Yeah, because we forget that a little bit in the early parts of the movie. The dead son is the one who is playing with the soldiers from the get-go. I
completely forgot about that.
Also, I think that's the reason I have a small collection of metal soldiers that I bought in like Scotland and England.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And now they're fighting in the American style. I mean, there's a little bit of conflict between him and Gabriel as his dad and gang goes on their own old ways of not being too different from the Redcoats and butchering anyone who surrenders.
This is true, yeah. I mean, for a man who's supposed to be, like, angelic perfect, minus, like, that one time he, like, went overboard.
Mm-hmm.
This does help him, like, make him not perfect, which I like.
Well, and Gabriel didn't say shit after the butchering of the one dude.
That's true.
Probably because of shock, but still, it's like...
We could have said something.
Yeah, or at least at one point of, like, you butchered those men.
Yeah, no, because... It all works, but it all works in this, like, suspended reality.
Yeah.
This, like, very drama history style.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's a good way of showing the different war mentalities and that they're changing a little bit.
Yeah.
The people that they've ambushed, it was a personal correspondence of General Cornwallis.
Sure, great.
Nice.
I
like the little joke that dog are good meat, and like the younger ones are like repulsed at why would you eat a dog?
Yeah, there's some good bits in there.
Yeah, and I mean this also ties to Francis Marion, who in 1780 gathered a band of men to use guerrilla tactics against the British troops, and it just.
Again, like, pulling from real sources without, like, getting too close to the real sources is nice, and I do like it. I think it's better than Braveheart's version. It does, however, add another characterness to this already, like, very full character.
Yeah, it just doesn't really add too much, other than, like, him turning his ways around a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from here we go back to the camp where there's a little bit of some racist dude and the creation of one nation under God of...
Which is hilarious because that phrase wasn't used at this time period, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. Well, don't worry about it.
We brought it up in National Treasure.
Yes, we did. That one, actually, better historical points.
Unfortunately, yeah. But we cut to a party with the Brits where the colonel is being put to the test. You have to bring in the ghost that you created.
I do like that line. That's good.
Yeah. I also love that their shit gets spoiled with the ship bombing and bringing up how pointless women are in these movies. The way all the women are just absolute dipshits of like, oh, are we having fireworks?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's meant to add a level of humor to, like, contrast that, like, very should be serious scene, but it doesn't quite resonate in, like, a useful way.
Yeah. I mean, it's just doesn't work well. Like, they could have left that out and just had Tavington just down his drink and be
that would have been much better.
It.
Also, yeah. I don't think they, like, fully have the audience realize, like, the importance of this ship. Because, again, this movie it is attempting to be historical, but in such a, like, dramatized way that, like, there isn't really, like, the struggle of being a early colonizer in America. Like, they relied on these ships for everything. They're not super self-sufficient as far as, like, what they thought they had versus what they thought they needed. This ship would have been almost priceless for the war.
And just expensive in general.
Oh, very expensive. Terribly expensive.
Also a big showing for Benjamin's brigade of like, hey, you thought you were safe.
Yeah.
Boom, goodbye ship.
And also, good luck getting back, bitch.
I mean, well, true.
You're stuck now.
Find another boat.
This is true. But, like, the idea.
Remember, they own the port of Charlestown right now.
That is true. We haven't gotten to that part in the war.
Yeah. But now we're back to the town where or the village that Anna's at.
I don't care about Anna.
There's some more dumb jokes with the deaf guy or the loss of hearing guy, where Gabriel's like, "May I call on Anne?" Of course you call yourself a man. It's just like
it is a little tiny bit humorous, and the only reason I almost like really don't care about this interaction is because it is aimed at the younger. Like, it is meant to reflect the younger love interest in the older couple.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, is the better love story in this. So, like, I don't hate it.
Yeah, because they make a joke of it, too, of, like, when they put him in the bundling bag, where, she's like, leave them alone, which the bundling bag was a real thing I didn't know about.
Yes, it was.
Where the dad's listening in, and she's like, don't worry, I sewed him in tightly. I'm a better sewer than my mom. And he's like, I hope you were. I hope you are. Which, I mean, it's a funny joke that, hey, they know young love. They did it themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have this, like, before the bundling bag and the ink and the tea scene. Cute scene with the ink and the tea.
I do question this man's taste buds for not being able to taste that much ink in his tea.
I question it a bit, too.
But, like, it's cute and, like, I don't know, it's got that, like, revive Romeo Juliet love silliness that, like, I don't care. It's cute, and this is honestly the more compelling love story because it's young puppy love. Yeah.
There's another scene that I'm sure you forgot about too, where there's a quick cut of Benjamin praying in the chapel, which
I had completely forgotten about that part.
It's never used again. Like, it's never established before that he's a super religious man. Of course, at the time he's going to be religious.
Yeah,
but it's never used again.
I honestly think the only reason it's in there is because there are, like, these check boxes to make sure that this movie hits the modern ideal patriotism. And, yeah, having at least, like, a few recognition points of being like, he's a man about America, he's a family man, and he prays
God, country, and fuck them damn Brits and their beans on toast.
Yeah. I mean, we also eat beans and toast, just not at the same time.
Yeah.
No, I take that back. Southern people, we eat beans on toast. They're just not from a can. They're baked beans. You take them out of Tupperware from Hy-Vee and you put them on the side and you put toast in it.
What?
This is barbecue. Barbecue comes with a big old slab of toast.
Yeah, but
and beans and coleslaw, and those things end up touching.
I've never heard of a Tupperware of beans.
What do you buy your beans in?
Can? Like...
No. The good shit comes from the deli section.
I don't really shop in the deli section.
How could you? That's where... Well, you're fancy. You make your own potato salad. Us normal folk go and buy our potato salad from Walmart.
Yeah. But... Also, I mean, this scene is just to show that Gabriel has something to fight for aside from his principles, because... And
his children, and his Anne, and his 3 people who work for him, and his house.
Well, no, Gabriel.
Oh, yeah, him too.
Yeah, it's starting to build up that Gabriel is not just fighting for freedom.
And also to, like, be like his dad. Like, he's proving that he's more like his father, and, like, as the war progresses.
Mm-hmm. But from here we cut to the morning where there's a bulletin posted that states the freedom for African Americans is set out, which it's another moment of the one dude being racist and just doesn't really... It's another historical element that they added that doesn't really add to the overall story.
No, it also just isn't terribly historically accurate. And it just
they did have... Towards the end, they did start saying, hey, you can get your freedom from fighting for us for a certain amount of time. The Brits started it first, and...
Yeah, but much like the rest of this whole entire war, there was more to it and more complications than just, like, a bulletin poster and, like, one man making a racist joke. But, you know, again, like we've already mentioned, this movie glosses over a lot of that.
Yeah. But Benjamin can't afford the supplies, and they're okay with it. They're like, pay us back when you can.
That's so nice of them.
Yeah, which, more ambush tactics, but they done fucked up this time. It's a trap.
It was a trap.
Which they are finally outgunned and outflanked, and they're forced to take, they're forced to retreat finally. So this is the first time in the movie that things aren't going well for this ragtag group.
Yes.
And they're forced to take hostages too. So we know it's a different time around because as far as they're aware, if that guy shows up, everyone's dead. They don't know that he's been put on a short leash.
That is true. They don't know.
Yeah. And it's a very quick scene. It's not as flashy as the other ones. There's one bit of the African-American dude saving the racist guy.
Yeah, like, it's a fine scene, and I don't remember it. I don't really care. It could have been shorter.
Yeah, it's just a way to set some stuff up, because Back at camp, Benjamin and Gabriel have a come to Jesus moment with each other about
of course they do.
What he did in the French Indian War, and he just butchered people. Like, they don't even go into the detail. They're just like, we showed up at the fort, and what they did was awful, and we retaliated. It's like,
okay. Do you want to elaborate any there, mister? No? Yeah. All right.
Because now immediately we go right from there to going to save the men and meet with Cornwallis. Yeah. Which he expressed the ungently manner expected by the Brits and their conflict of ideals of like, well, I think burning down houses with people is ungentlemanly as well.
Which, again, this movie gets so close to several like very interesting true historical topics without really actually caring or touching about them. It just like it briefly mentions this like actual thing that was like you could study this entire phenomenon. Yeah. And it just was like very quickly like, well, I disagree with you.
Yeah. And the Brits are trying to worm their way around it of like showing like, we might have done that, but we had reason to do that. You have no reason. Yeah.
Again, like this movie's very one-sided. It is. But like, again, if you watch it for what it is meant to be, it's fine. And like, this is a compelling like way to get the audience riled up on the side of our hero.
Yeah. And, I mean, they also show it with the dogs like Benjamin more than Cornwallis.
I do think that is a little funny. As someone who also loves dogs, though, what does this man have in his pockets that he meets these dogs for all of like 10 minutes and they're like, fuck my owners, I'm going with the strange man?
I don't know.
I like that the movie implies that, like, because he's so good and, like, such a great person, even the dogs know. But, like, I've been around many dogs. Yeah. This is not how they operate.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's just another dumb element that doesn't... Because this is the last scene we see of the dogs, I think, too.
Yeah, no, they just, like, disappear. Yeah. And we've already been told earlier that we're eating dogs. So, like, where'd the dogs go?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Into someone's stomach, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah. But they really do a good job of making Tavington unpleasant, where they trick them of like, oh, well, we've got a bunch of your officers over there, but they wouldn't tell me their names, but here their ranks, and they called me a cheeky fellow.
How rude.
Yeah. It just still reestablishes that it's a revenge story it's really a story of Benjamin versus Tavington.
Yeah, which, I don't know. I think it works. I wish we'd focus a little bit more on it.
Yeah, what is Benjamin's last name anyways? Martin.
Boring. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just keep calling him Benjamin. Because I just realized I've been calling Tavington by his last name this whole time.
But they call him by his last name the whole time. And then they call Ben by his first name. They call him Ben and Benjamin the whole movie.
True. Probably why I wrote it down like that.
I think so. I also think that this is like a very smart writing tactic. Like you feel like you are more personally attached to the first name Ben. It's a very familiar name. And Tavington, on top of sounding very British, is also like a last name. It's much more formal. There's a distance there.
There's the military aspect of that. Then.
Exactly. Which, I mean, smart writing.
Yeah, which they get their men back. And I do like this part where the one dude shows up with the straw. Yeah. Fake soldiers, and they're like, "What's that? One of our rescued officers, sir."
Yeah.
Yeah. But from here we cut to another night scene where Tavington gets permission to let loose with the promise of land because he can't go back to the colonies after what he does. So he's curious about Ohio.
Yes. Not to spoil Ohio for him, but don't worry about it too much, sir.
Yeah. Well, he also finds out that Benjamin Martin is the ghost, and this is where he starts to put the loyalist to the test. The one dude that we see a couple times. Emmerich mentioned that this character is supposed to be like the comparable to Benjamin from the first movie.
Yeah.
Where they had to be put to the trial and through the hard times, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's whatever. Again, this movie's like, you don't remember this movie being as long as it is until you're watching it, and then you realize like there's so much stuff happening.
Yeah, it's another one where like this and Braveheart, I sent you a message of like, hey Chris, you realize how long these movies are?
I had forgotten how long both of these movies were.
Yeah, although the Patriot's on one VHS tape, I think.
modernized VHS tape system.
No, old. We originally owned this on VHS.
Oh, that's true. So did we.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it feels long when you watch it, too. Because, like, the action scenes are spaced just far enough apart.
Yeah.
That, like, it's not, like, keeping the pace for you.
Yeah. Like, it's not like Braveheart. And even then, like, Braveheart has the big action sequences, big action sequence. Braveheart is little action, big action, long dialogue, little action, long dialogue, little action, end of the movie.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why those dialogues feel so much longer than, like, Braveheart, because, like, Braveheart has quite a bit of dialogue, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the reason why it feels longer is we have so many characters at play that to make this movie work, to make it a good movie, we do need to spend time with all of them, which I'm glad we did. However, the downside to that is we are forced to listen to a lot of different people talk.
Exactly. But now it's time for Tavington to try and take out the family, burning of the plantation. They had a real plantation that they built over to make it look bigger and more impressive when they burned it. Which
is hilarious, because, like, and as architects, we know this happens a lot, where, like, people imagine these old historical things bigger than what they actually are. And so when you get to a movie setting, like, you have to blow things up to make it fit that scale.
Yep.
This is another example of that.
Well, and they were also worried that they were actually going to burn down this historical house.
Which you definitely cannot do. Please don't do that.
Try not to, at least.
Yeah.
But I do like the lighting of the scene. It makes for an intense atmosphere.
It looks really good.
Especially with, like, the angled moonlight coming in. But I have complaints.
Of course you do.
How the fuck did Tavington not see the kid's shoes? And his clothes are different than the cloth of the tablecloth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, even in the actual movie scene, there's a giant dark shadow where the kid is hiding on the other side, and he just, like, ignores it. The other thing that I love, and I don't know if you also caught this, is when they are, like, as a family being herded out the side door, I'm not sure if it's Tavington or just another soldier on horseback walk, like, right in front of them, and they are just, like, standing there, silhouetted in the moonlight.
Yeah, no, that's like
and,
most
like,
of this
he doesn't
movie.
even look, like, slightly to the right.
And they're not even hiding, like, behind the bushes or looking through it. They're looking over the bushes.
Yeah.
It's like,
the fact that this family did not get seen and captured immediately is a miracle from God.
It's all that praying for that 2 seconds of scene.
Honestly, I feel like that's what the family, like, completely agrees with you on.
Yeah. Well, and it's also to show how Tavington's amping up his cruelties, even killing the slaves, because, well, let's be honest, we don't know what their relationship is to Aunt Charlotte.
Well, I also think this is trying to amp up him being a bad guy, because the movie did make a huge point to be like, well, if you work for the British, you will be free. And he's like, I don't even care.
Yeah.
Burn everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's on his own vendetta.
Well, and somehow Benjamin knows, and he shows up to...
I don't understand this either.
Yeah,
he just, like, magically knows.
Yeah, there's not any lead up. It's just like, oh shit, we gotta take care of him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And they take the children and the aunt to an African-American village, which the movie was actually praised for this bit.
This is as close to being aware of the actual impact that the African-Americans had during this time period that the movie gets.
Yeah.
This is as close as we get.
Yeah. Like, it's also such a brief moment, too, because...
Oh, it's incredibly brief.
I mean, there's a moment where Benjamin is also, like, it's quickly overshadowed because Benjamin and Gabriel are riding back, and Benjamin's like, oh, I haven't seen my daughter in so long. How is she? And she's like, she misses you so much.
She says that she misses you. This child does not speak.
No, the child speaks and she says, I hate you, Daddy.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
I understand that mindset. But, like... But for the same reason as, like, young children, like, if you are gone a lot, don't necessarily remember why. Like, there's no sense of justice. This child does not comprehend war.
Yeah.
She knows her dad is gone and she is mad about it. I have experienced the same thing.
Well, and on top of all this, too, like, they go to the other houses. Some of them get out, some of them don't.
Yeah.
We only go to one. We go to John's, the war buddy who sees his dead kid and offs himself.
that is, I appreciate that the movie is trying to bring a level of, like, closeness to the horror of war.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, yes, house burning, very bad, traumatic, but also, like, it's a distance, everyone got out, we're all safe. This man, like, is plain view upset and ends his life because of it. So I give movie props for, like, trying to really, like, get the audience to have that, like, gut feeling about what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
However, like, again, you very quickly forget about this scene because, like, we don't really know this guy.
No, we've had one scene with him and the kid, and yeah, the kid's cute, but I mean, I think it's just there to really show, like, the toll it's taking on the men, and that John's a different character from these. His son died, but he still went out for revenge, and on top of that, he gives them all 1 week furlough and releases them with no like real like repercussion if they don't show up again.
Yeah, it feels very much like we're trying to make our already very good guy the ultimate modern day good guy without really going through the whole thought process here.
Yeah.
I mean, it works, it's fine, it's just a little bit boring, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. And even now, it's break time to bring the family together. Like we said, there's little bits of action, and then it's just long periods of nothingness, because
we have to keep track of so many people.
Well, and it's to bring Benjamin and Gabriel back together, of, like, Gabriel now has something to fight for with Anne.
Yeah.
Benjamin, they eat their apples the same way, at the same pacing.
Again, I still don't like it.
Yeah, Gabriel finally understands why Benjamin didn't want to take arms to begin with.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I do think that this thought process is very good and necessary for the overall story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care for how long, especially this part of the dialogue section lasts. It is very long. And it feels a little bit too much like we took the writing portion a little too literally for, like, what to shoot and how long to look at it. Like, it all works, but in this overarching story sense as opposed to a movie sense.
Yeah. And it's just, Gabriel gets married, Benjamin even gets a new honey with a deep, passionate kiss with his sister's wife.
Yeah, I don't love it.
Yeah.
But at this point in the movie, the mention of his dead wife has now been long enough that the audience has kind of sort of forgot how these two characters are related.
Yeah, she's not even... We only know that she existed because of one tombstone.
Yes. And also, I think at the very beginning, they mentioned that, like, we're going to see your mother's sister. At, like, the very beginning.
Yeah, Aunt Charlotte.
And then after that, like, they just kind of brush that knowledge under the rug. And by this point in the movie, honestly, I have forgotten this woman's existence several times, and I have also forgotten her relationship to Ben in the first place. Which is good, because the relationship is upsetting. Mildly upsetting. Like, I don't love it. It's a little ick. Got the ick just a little bit. But not so much that I have got giant complaints and should write to someone about it.
Benjamin's trying to keep it in the family.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
But after all this, they're off to war. They go back to their swamp camp, and it's this big build-up moment of, like, well, maybe maybe everyone abandoned them, and then out of the mist, everyone shows up.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's very theatrical. It looks cool as hell. It doesn't really add a whole lot, but, like, it looks good.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah, it's fine.
And we cut back to Anne's village, where everyone is gathered, which they give up so easily.
They give up so easy.
Which we get the trying of the loyalists a little bit further, and I mean, they do have a good use of using the dialogue from before in a good way. They say something of, like, oh, you said you thought they were all traitors and all should burn. Here's your chance, buddy.
Yeah, but at the same time, that dialogue was so long ago that I had legit forgotten about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's only used, like, this is the second time it's used.
True.
And I think this is the last scene we see this character too. No, he dies the next scene, I think, maybe. I don't know. He's not important anything outside of this.
It's true.
Which the landscape shots are great.
They are pretty.
And the rebels are burned in the church. which
poetic, I guess.
I think there's a good well, the rebels return and they see that the church is burned down. No one's out, which they do a good way of showing not telling in this, where the lock on the church door is a good way of like, oh shit, no one got out.
Yeah, no, like this is the style of show not tell that I wish the rest of the movie had been.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I do want to mention that this part was also heavily criticized, stating by, of course, British reviewers, that this never happened. But I do like the director's justification and artistic license of it, and I will agree with it.
Okay.
It's not a far stretch. They agree. They said that yes, this never happened, but there were incidents where they burned churches, and they burned houses with people inside them. We just combined two elements that did happen. That's okay.
I will give the director that. Yes, this is the way to combine history in a way that, like, this is also horrible. I don't need to see the two events separately.
Yeah,
this works the best, I think.
Yeah, well, we did kind of see it already.
Well, yes, but at the same time, like, that one was a personal vendetta, whereas this is like an atrocity of the war. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also worth mentioning that both sides of the war were not good. I mean,
no, it's war.
Yeah. You
don't get me wrong here.
Yeah, there's nothing great about it.
No.
But Gabriel, obviously having only had his one night with his wife, retaliates in rage with no plan, which there is so much slow motion in this entire scene.
Also, the minute that they get married, the audience is like, he's gonna die.
Yeah.
Because, like, why would you wrap up that love story so quick?
Yeah, he's got nothing to return to, really. I mean, technically, that's a wife to return to, but...
Yeah, you know.
But it's also a way for Tavington to egg him on and, like, be like, hey, we're taking everything you love. And so...
Yes, no, like, it all works. I think it's just a little fast and hard as far as, like, he's been married, he's had one night with his wife, and now we're gonna be, like, using this against the character.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, his love interest has been here the whole time. She has been in this movie the whole time.
Kind of.
Okay, for like half the movie.
She's been in 3 or 4 scenes.
According to the rest of the love stories that we have to compare, that's a long time.
It's like a scene more than...
the other one that's meant to be the most compelling love story in the movie. And honestly, she has more love scenes than the dead wife, who is the, like, entire reason for all of this, like, entire, like, oh no, I gotta protect my family and my house that my dead wife and I built together.
Well, speaking of love scenes...
yeah.
Would you have liked to have a necrophilia scene more?
No.
Exactly.
No, I would not have. I would have preferred that he, like, got married much earlier in the film.
Or if he was already married to the aunt.
Honestly, yeah. Honestly, yes.
It's still the same thing.
No, it's still terrible and I still get the ick real hard from it, but then at least we don't have to look at it as much.
True. Very true.
And also, like, it is a little awkward to have this dual romance happening. I know the idea behind the writing and the directing was to show how him and his son are very similar, but, like, one is young and compulsive and, like, doesn't understand the world, whereas he does. I get that idea. I just don't think it works love story-wise.
No,
I think it works beautifully for the war portions of the film. I just don't really see it in the whole interactions with his own aunt.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's not his aunt.
Or his children's aunt.
Yeah.
The dynamics are not the same.
No, I know. Like,
they are not comparable. They just are happening at the same time.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They're there to make it a parallel path instead of a good war movie or a good war romance movie.
Yes.
Yeah, which also, Gabriel is gonna learn something today.
That's very true.
He's gonna learn that death is permanent.
And it fucking hurts.
As does the pastor.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Which, I mean, not playing it safe was a mistake. And Benjamin's also too late. Like, why didn't Benjamin go off with him? Like,
there's a lot of what ifs for this part of the movie, though.
Yeah, teaching his son led to not teaching his son kind of led to his son's death.
I would agree with you.
Like,
yeah.
As far as we know, the son's been in like maybe 5 battles.
He watched one from the sideline. Does that count?
Kind of.
I mean, close.
Yeah.
Yeah, his son definitely doesn't have the, like, strategy here.
No, not at all. He's just in a blind rage because he's young.
Yes, which I get, and I understand why on first watching without doing any, like, deep thinking on this movie, why that works.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it breaks down too quickly for when you start, like, looking into this film.
Exactly. Because from here we cut back to the larger rebellion camp where Benjamin is giving up and asks for justification for their sacrifice. And it's like, dude, Benjamin, shut the hell up.
But actually,
You justified death to save and avenge your son. You killed a lot of other people too, man.
in front of children.
Yeah.
Your children.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I see what you point.
Yeah, and he's about to quit, but what do we have here? A flag that was only used one other time in the movie that Gabriel had been fixing magically restores Benjamin's faith. It's almost like we talked about, like
there is a checklist of patriotic films, and the flag flying in battle is one of them.
Yeah, it almost makes it feel like one of those like really bad Jesus movies where it's like
it is in the same fucking vein.
Exactly.
Yes, no, those two things, much like him and his love interest, are too closely related for you not to be a little uncomfortable.
Yep. And now he's back. He's coming up with a plan, and there's some cool landscape shots again.
Don't get me wrong, this movie visually looks really good.
Yep. The melting of the last toy soldier. I also do like the French dude, like putting Benjamin down in the most French way I've ever seen in a movie. Benjamin just kind of looks him up and down. He's like, "At least I will die looking good.
He's got a point.
Or dressed well."
No. Historically, though, the French guy's got a point. Their uniforms at this time period looked a lot better than ours.
Yeah.
They did. They just did. This was pre everyone should be hidden and camouflaged, and more like, is my army fancy?
Yeah.
I'm going to intimidate you with how fancy my army is.
Yes. But now it is time for the showdown that is based off the Battle of Cowpens and Guilford Courthouse.
Loosely.
Yeah, very loosely.
Very loosely.
Benjamin's sending a letter that he might, if he doesn't survive and you do, please send this to my family. The African-American soldier is now there on his own accord and has changed one person. I'm proud to serve with you now.
It's so fucking cheesy, it hurts.
Oh, it's awful. And it doesn't add anything to the movie because we had like those couple parts, but it's just another element that doesn't contribute.
And I think the reason why this line specifically makes me cringe more than a lot of the other ones is because this movie went so freaking far out of its way to ignore the African-American portion of this history. And then we put this in right kind of at the end and been like, no, we've had a change of heart.
And do jack shit with it afterwards as well.
No, it really doesn't add anything to the film. It doesn't add anything to, like, even the after credits of the film. Like, it does nothing for the movie. I kind of wish we would have continued on with this fake South of, like, there's 3 African-American people and they're all owned by a nice man. Yeah.
No, it's exactly that. And, like, I don't know, now they've changed to, like, they're playing by the British rules at this big battle.
It's confusing. Again, the actual battle is a interesting and compelling part of history, but, like, we've skewed it far enough that we have to, like, change it to match the over-the-top character that we have created to put in this situation, who doesn't belong in this battle.
Yeah.
So, like, the battle itself works because it's based off of history. The character's interaction with the battle doesn't work because they have proven to be a different style and mindset than what actually happened in the battle.
Yeah.
So, like, it's a little awkward here at the end, but it looks cool.
Exactly. And, I mean, we get the cool big flashy explosions.
It does look really good.
He grabs the flag as they're trying to retreat. No retreat!
Don't get me wrong. It is wrong, but it looks great.
Yeah, it's a lot. It feels like it's supposed to try and be like the big speech from Braveheart, but it's in the middle of a battle, so you can't exactly just stand there and give a speech.
I like this better, though, because while the Braveheart speech had some good moments, specifically the butt lightning, it was kind of long drawn out and, like, didn't match the character. This matches the character, at least. Like, he is action first, talk later.
Yeah.
So, like, I am not upset. It looks bad at certain points as far as, like, wow, we're going a little slow-mo cheesy here, huh?
Oh, yeah.
But, like...
Yeah, him storming through the building with the flag, and just like, oh, okay, this turns the tide of battle somehow.
Because friendship, I don't know.
I mean, even the British higher-ups are kind of giving up. I'm like, well, we could flank him, and he's like, just shut up.
Yeah,
all right.
I don't really understand the actual, like, war mentality here, but again, it looks good, and if you don't deep dive and think real hard about this, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's a good climax.
It's a way to bring to the final showdown between Tavington and Benjamin, which...
Yes.
The music at this point kind of feels like a Final Fantasy boss fight to me.
Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because the guy who created the music... all of his music kind of follows the same, like, patterning as Final Fantasy.
It's John Williams is kind of like the Star Wars theme, the da-da-da-da-da-da.
Having those themes be big, bold, and, like, clear makes it so that you have that similar, like, idea as a, like, video game, like, big boss battle thing, where you've got a main theme with lots of extra going on around it.
Okay. Yeah. And it's epic. I mean...
it's epic as hell.
We're finally back to the source of what was driving this movie. And
honestly, the good parts of this movie. Yeah. Let's be real.
And I think they did a better job of, like, building up that maybe Benjamin would die, but of course he doesn't.
No, I do like the will he not live of this portion. Because, like, this is one of the few times in these corny sorts of war movies that, like, it is fairly up in the air. We don't know if Benjamin makes it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do. There is a good line with it where it's like, "You're right. My sons were better men."
I do appreciate that we have finally acknowledged multiple sons.
Yeah.
Daughter, fuck you.
Even the two sons that helped me.
Yes, actually.
I know he's supposed to be mentioning the two dead sons.
No, he's 100% only talking about the two dead sons.
To be fair, the 2-year-old hasn't really developed enough to, like, be a real person.
No, but they try so hard to, like, create this father-daughter bond, but they do so in a half a scene and, like, 3 lines.
Yeah.
That, like, you forget that she exists.
Yeah, no, it's exactly dumb.
There's just... Like, he is a family man for everyone, but half of his family.
Yeah, exactly. And in real life, this was Tavington's last battle in South Carolina, where he did lose to General Daniel Morgan's army.
Yeah, at least we got some history right.
Yeah.
I mean, more than Braveheart.
He didn't die in that battle, but...
Yeah, that's okay. Close enough.
He's also not actually...
this person?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Which, now we cut to a narration of the French arrival, letter to his family, return to his friend. There's a nice little touching moment of his new war buddy's going to name his son Gabriel.
Great, I love it.
Yeah, Imric thought it was a good idea to bring the French in to close the movie. The movie actually closes with them returning to find his men rebuilding his home, which
is a little odd, but okay.
Which are going to... We'll build a whole new world and start with your home. It's like, are you going to help them build their homes back?
No.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, don't get me wrong. From a, like, purely story-based telling, this is a great ending. Mm-hmm. It's got the elements of loss, but also the new hope and revival, and, like, we've got help from the outside. Hope. Yeah. No. New Hope on arguably a little bit better version of a war mill. But, like, it's got the same, like, idea of, like, we still have problems, but there is a new horizon. Mm-hmm. There's new chance. From a war film standpoint, a little odd that this is where we choose to decide, like, everything is fine now.
Yeah.
Remember, this isn't the end of the war. That's just the end of this one battle.
Yeah.
So, like, this is it does, again, if you are just watching this for the cinematography, fantastic. If you think about this a little too hard, it doesn't work. No,
not at all. They would have been better off with just ending it after that battle and him returning home. Like the big battle with Tavington.
Yeah.
That would have been a much better ending, but of course they got to add one last little bit of element to it that doesn't really add anything to the movie.
Because there is a little bit too much emphasis on this idea of romance. Mm-hmm. And to have romance, you need to have some form of, like, soft ending. Otherwise, it just isn't useful element. And, like, the writers, while there's a lot wrong with this, they were good, and they did know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They had a lot that they got right. So they know very well that, like, just having it end and having no conclusion to the love portion of this movie would have been weird.
Yeah. I mean, they were very proud of their historical accuracy, and they should be.
They should be. No, they got a lot right. And honestly, for a 2000s film, I'm fairly impressed. There's only a couple of other nerds who are better at history than them, and we've already talked about him.
Yeah, James Cameron. Titanic.
God, that man's a nerd. But, like, without going full cosmic level nerd, this is a fairly good history interpretation.
This movie would have been better as a Romeo and Juliet movie.
It would have!
With the backdrop of the Civil War.
To be honest, there's a lot that I do like about this film. I think all of my gripes could have been fixed with a tighter edit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that is not necessary for this film. There's a lot of characters that are not necessary for this film, and honestly, leaving them on the cutting room floor would have solved a lot of my problems.
Yeah, same here. And, I mean, the movie was generally liked as a thing, and, I mean, the director didn't think it was Oscar-worthy, because, I guess, historically, Revolutionary War movies don't do well at the Oscars.
Honestly,
shocking.
War movies in general don't do well at the Oscars.
But it was nominated for 3.
Which is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie has managed to keep a very tight hold in, like, the minds of the American movie audience. Whether, like, most people aren't watching this regularly, but a lot of them have seen this at least once and remember big chunks of these scenes.
Yeah.
They honestly don't remember most of this movie, because once you rewatch it, you are shocked by how long it is.
Yeah.
But, like, the scenes of the flag, him killing the guy with the tomahawk, several of the speeches, a lot of the jokes, like the tea and the ink, those things managed to stick really well in people's heads. It didn't necessarily lead anywhere, which, honestly, I'm not mad about, but it did help, like, create kind of a mindset on how these sorts of, like, time period pieces should be handled. Yeah,
no, exactly. And I think that's the big thing, is that The Patriot is complete and utter fiction. It's not a real historical event.
Thank
which,
God.
Instead of throwing history out the window, they're able to make a fictional story with historical elements.
Yes.
And that's the big thing that Braveheart didn't do.
Yes. And I think this also was a very, like, this, like, helped open up a lot of different avenues for history and war-based films, where the idea of something being loosely based off of history, getting the major plot points right, adding in your own characters so you're not taking a specific person, did lead to this, like, increase, not necessarily in Civil War history, mostly World War II, with a little bit of World War I, but this idea, like, this framework was used for quite a few years. Yeah. Well, and I think that is an issue, too, because where we talked about in Braveheart, where we had the couple little opening scenes with Hamish. Yeah. That didn't go anywhere. No, not a place. And there were a couple scenes in Braveheart that didn't go anywhere or add too much to it. Yeah. I think those were just, those were there, and they worked in their element because it did contribute ever so slightly to a little thing here and there. But the word The Patriot doesn't work that way. Is Imric said he tried to give everyone a little arc, and that was the issue, is that everyone had a little arc that detracted from the two main arcs. Yes. And I think this is why the overall styling of The Patriot and this, like, main points storytelling wise did get reused for a lot of other war films down the road. But what I think people realized, especially rewatching it, and especially writers and directors realized, is The Patriot, the way it is currently set up, the story, the people that it currently deals with, all of the arcs, all of the character development, all of the little details, would have been a phenomenal book. Movie-wise, it's too much to keep track of. Yeah. It's too much dialogue to try and run through. It's too many people to try and remember who they are, why I care about them, why I'm sad that they shot themselves or didn't. Like, that's too much, whereas in a book format, you've got your own pacing you can go to. You could honestly add more. So, like, I think because people liked The Patriot so much, despite having these flaws, I think that's why later on we got to see this, like, evolution on war films. And I think people also realized that the Civil War, while an important historical event, is too dense to have, like, specific little bits. And also, like, time-wise too dense, so that's why we moved on to bigger wars that had more space to cover, like World War I and World War II. Because it's a lot easier to pick a specific country and focus in there.
Or a specific battle instead of trying to spread this over like 3 or 4 battles.
Yeah, because when you truly learn about the Civil War, it has a lot of those same similarities where, like, yes, there were specific battles. Unfortunately, the way the American education system teaches the Civil War is as one big thing.
Yeah.
And unless you are a war, research person, much like World War I and World War II, most people aren't going to really know 90% of those battles. They might know 1 or 2 that they could potentially pick out of, a multiple choice.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the template, the framework of the Patriot sticks with people, and that's why they remember this as a good movie. And why it made such a big impact, because, people liked this movie a lot when it came out.
I mean, I remember liking it up until rewatch. I mean...
No, I liked it until I rewatched it, too.
Yeah. But, I mean, for me, going back and rewatching it, my personal enjoyment came from looking at the British critical responses and watching them get pissy over being portrayed as the bad guys, which, for a lot of countries, they were the bad guys.
Yes.
But it's like, of course you're the bad guys. It's an American Revolutionary movie.
For Americans.
Yeah.
It is a patriotic film for Americans.
You were the bad guys for a few back then.
And also, this is a patriotic film not aimed at, heavy historical buffs. Because, we see that later on in movie watching history of, later on we get much more heavy detailed movies. And, for some people, those are, the epitome of a war film because they are very historically accurate. They are very dense. They are very in-depth. Some of them are multiple parts long.
Yeah.
This one is definitely aimed at a very generic audience. It is there to, feed off of that American patriotism. It is there to make you feel proud of, this history, this part of, the time of your, past. Whether or not it's correct, whether or not, there's more to that argument, isn't really necessary. I also think a huge part of the reason why there was such a butthurtness to the critics for this film, especially from not American critics, is this hit a little bit too close to a lot of other American films that also shit on the British. There was a little wave of not British-friendly films.
Yeah.
Or films that directly made fun of the British.
Well, I can see why this one would have been big when it came out, too, because, I mean, it came out shortly before 9/11, so...
Which, granted, 9/11 upped the patriotism. However, early 2000s, almost all the way up until, 2010, there was this giant wave of, over patriotism, over nationalism in American culture. And part of it was just the time period, that's just where we were in our cycle. So it happened to land at the perfect time. It was made and produced and came out just the right moment.
Yeah. Fun fact, because I was just thinking about Team America.
Oh yeah, another
4 years after this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, Chris, what do you rate this on the good, bad, weird scale?
While I have a lot of bitching that I've done about this film, it is a good film. Is it historically accurate? No. Do I have a lot of complaints? Yes. However, if I am just watching it to watch a movie, it's good. It looks good. The costuming's good. The dialogue is fairly good. My only real complaint is that it's long-winded.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm in the same boat with you. I think I'm more aligned with what you thought of Braveheart, where I think it's fine.
It's fine, yeah. I'm not, in love with this film, but, I think a lot of my complaints came from having to research this film for the podcast. And I think if I was a, standard moviegoer who just happened to rewatch this film because it was on or because someone suggested it, I'd probably think the same thing I used to think, which is it's pretty good. Yeah,
I think I'm in the same boat, but, I mean, granted, with the type of movies and how many movies I watch, I think as a more mature viewer, I think I'd say it's fine.
It's fine. I also think that, if you like war movies, if you like patriotic movies, this isn't necessarily, top tier. There's so many better ones, but with that said, there's a reason why people start a lot of the times that, like, war movie, like, genre with this.
Yeah, and I think I've also just been spoiled with the amount of solid anti-war movies.
True.
That honestly, in my opinion, a lot of times trump the war movies for the most part.
I agree. I also think we are getting to enjoy war movies at a time that, like, when these movies were being made, we didn't think we would hit.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, we have not only gone through this hyper-patriotic war films, but we've also seen the other side of that in movie making. And, like, we've reached kind of, like, we've got the best of both. Like, you can watch so many variations on so many different wars over all sorts of time periods and places with varying levels of, like, directors and writing. So, like, I still say this is good. However, I do not say this is, like, an epitome of its genre.
No.
And honestly, like, if you've seen this movie once, I'm not even going to suggest you rewatch it.
So, do you recommend watching this movie?
If you have never seen it, no. I honestly don't. Like, there's so many better ones. If you are looking in for, like, the reason I had to watch this the first time was for a history class.
Okay.
There are so many better representations and way to educate in a quote-unquote fun way about this time period in America. With that said, though, if you have already seen this film, I think you should rewatch it now that it's been a while.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, and I'm glad we came back to rewatch this one. Thank your husband for his comical mistake.
I will never, ever let him forget.
But, yeah, I think I'm in that same boat of, like, I think it is worth watch to see what was considered good for the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'll ever go back to rewatch this one, to be honest.
I totally understand.
Like, and I agree. If you haven't seen it in a while, go back and rewatch it, formulate your own opinion.
Oh, definitely.
But I don't think I'll ever go back to this one.
I think the only reason I might come back is as we've talked about several times in this podcast, I love costuming for films.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie visually has a lot going for it. So, like, if you're interested in, like, that sort of part, this movie's got great examples of that. I don't know if I'd watch it for the movie itself, though.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, but anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.